Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may happen to be. This is the Talk About Your Community live stream show on LinkedIn Live, and also simultaneously streaming up on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining in today. And I have a guest who's coming back today, who's been on the show once before, and we had an amazing conversation. His company that we'll introduce in just a second is doing some amazing work in creating more meaningful connections and authentic engagement in online spaces. So of course, this is stuff that's interesting to me as a community builder. The topic today is really around mindful engagement online, and whether that's in your online community or through your workplace meetings. The idea is that with our schedules filling up so much like they do, the kinds of meetings and the technology we're using to meet, needs to be up to the task of helping us to find, more authentic ways to interact, to stay engaged, to stay interested. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm on Zoom meetings and Google meetings every day, multiple meetings a day, and the burnout factor for that is just so high and so exhausting over time. And so with Rocco Haro, who's my guest today, is one of the founders for an organization called Kickback Space that he's definitely doing some things at the innovative edge of these kinds of interactions. And so looking forward to welcoming him on the show today. Please give him a warm welcome in the comments. We are watching the comments, and this is a very interactive show. If you're here for the first time, I'm very glad you're here. Would love to hear your questions and ideas along the way. And then, of course, if you catch this in the replay afterwards, I'm still tracking those kinds of commentaries, and would love to hear from you. And we'll try to answer each and every one of you who come out. But without any further delay, let me just bring on Rocco onto the screen. Rocco, how are you, my friend? How have you been?
Good morning. I've been fantastic. Really just been heads down, building the product. So, been very, very busy, but very well.
That's so great. I mean, I think it's maybe been a year since you've been on the show. I can't believe the show's been around that long. And the last time you gave a bit of a preview of what Kickback Space was going to be, but I thought it might be nice if we could just kind of start out. I'll often ask people about their origin story, but why don't we put it this way? Simon Sinek talks about starting with your why. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your why? Why are you in this space? Why did you create Kickback Space? Why is this important to you?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I've always been very curious, and ever since I was little, I would always be questioning things. Sometimes my mom would have no idea how to answer some of my questions, but I've always been very curious, for better or worse, right? Sometimes it's been frustrating for some folks when I keep questioning things. So 5 years ago, I decided that, I'm going to dive into entrepreneurship, and whatever it might be, it's going to be a company that constantly is questioning how the world works, right? Continuously thinking outside the box, and just trying to figure out and understand the fundamentals of whatever it is that we're trying to solve for, and figure out how we can rethink things and make it better. And what kicked off Kickback Space was really the pandemic, right? It's March 2020. I was at a startup called Auto Pharmacy as an engineer, and we used to have bi-weekly happy hours. Well, since everything went virtual, we started using Zoom, and the happy hours weren't as happy. It was challenging to connect with people. Normally, when I'm in an in-person setting, I like to be a social butterfly, and I migrate between groups and conversations. It's just so fluid, right? And those social cues that we have in person just allow us to gauge attention, allow us just to pivot between conversations with just no problem at all. And with Zoom, it was just so challenging. There was so much friction, right? People would actually be more quiet than they would be in person. And some of those folks were already introverts, but they didn't want to be rude and speak over you, right? So it was tough. It was really tough. we tried using this platform called Gather Town. It's like a 2D map, and you can like move around. And when someone is close to your little digital avatar, their video feed pops up, right? So you
I've
could
seen something similar to that. I played in a platform called Topia that seems like a similar kind of idea.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just like Topia.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Except just the visuals of the 2D map are different. The characters are more like Pokemon characters.
Okay.
Yeah. So we tried that, and we only used it once, and never went back to it. Right. So it didn't necessarily solve our problems. What it did do was make the life of the host um, easier, right? Because now people could self-organize within the space. And when we used it, there were no name tags, so you would just see a digital avatar. Like from far away, you would have no clue who it was. I remember so vividly when I first joined, and we were all figuring it out. Two people ran into each other, right? One person started talking, and then the second person just walked away. And they were like rude, right? So it was such an interesting thing to like observe, right? So I like to people watch, and I accidentally psychoanalyze a little too much sometimes, but it was really interesting to see how that kind of like played out, like seeing how these social interactions and the platforms that we use can just fundamentally change and influence how we interact with each other. And so those like kind of like negative experiences, well, they weren't super negative, but like, that friction just marinated in my head for some time, for a few months until I found myself in a dream. I was hanging out in my apartment, and I had a group of people over, and we were just socializing, right? Just like, small, intimate social gathering in Southern California. We can call that a kickback. And so people were just hanging out, right? And multiple conversations taking place in parallel. And then all of a sudden, I heard someone knock on my door. And I had no idea who it was. And I wasn't expecting it. So I'm walking towards the door. I'm like, I don't know who this is. I want some privacy in answering this door. So I made everyone disappear on command. And that's when I woke up. I was like, whoa, like, I just had a bunch of people over at my house. We were all hanging out. It was as if we were together in person, but they were there virtually. And that's when the idea for a kickback really just took off, right? That's when I was like, this is the problem I'm going to figure out. I'm going to build a company that is constantly questioning how the world works, questioning what is wrong with traditional video conferencing. Why has it not changed since it was invented 40 years ago, right? To this day, like what we're using right now, this medium, we live in a 3D world, right? And yet you and I, we're still being presented in this like a 2D plane, right? And
We're side by side here,
yeah.
and that it's a very unnatural thing, and I think that it creates fatigue
Mhm.
situation too. Like I know some of the research that I've read is even around the idea of like when you have sort of the wall of people up on a Zoom meeting, that it's actually more exhausting because you're almost trying to make eye contact with all those individuals, and you're checking yourself out, at the same time. That's an unnatural state of things, and it's like physically fatiguing to be
Yes.
on a lot of those kinds of calls over time.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it's just so like you said, unnatural, right? Like at that moment in time, it's not as if everyone is staring at you, right? But everyone
Mhm.
is experiencing as if everyone is staring at you. That's just not how it works, right? And so yeah, that's a bit about my why.
Yeah, I love that, and so for people that don't or just in the audience trying to figure out like what is this kickback space thing if they haven't been to the website to take a look at what it is. um, I mean, you kind of took that concept of what you were describing with GatherTown and Topia that I mentioned as sort of like these 2D, like almost like a game environment or like a game board. Like if you picture you're putting out a Monopoly board and you're moving your piece around the Monopoly board, and but that's like video interactive, kind of space. you're taking that and making it almost a more photorealistic kind of experience of, walking in and having sort of face-to-face meetings with people, or like making it much more like a live networking event. And I don't know if I'm doing justice to the
You are.
description of it. I've had the opportunity to be in a couple of times and see the progress of what you've built. And it's like, I was very struck by what a smooth looking environment and experience it is. It's like, it's a beautiful space to interact with. And I know the environment, it was maybe a test environment, but it was a very calming space that was created. And I get very excited about these virtual immersive spaces, because they take us beyond the 2D that you're talking about in the movies and in the the movies, in the meetings, um, as well as they're an extension beyond sort of what I experience as online communities right now, which are either a version of social media experiences with a stream like a LinkedIn,
Mhm.
or a chat experience like Slack, or a discussion forum experience, which is increasingly alien to users. Um, it, that whole idea of like, how do we disrupt the friction of technology? And I see what you're trying to do with Kickback Space is kind of taking us to a step beyond that.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. I think that digital communities as a concept is really interesting, about how we can use all these different tools to ultimately bring people together around a common domain, expertise, interest, and I'm just really excited to see how we can transform what it means to have a digital community, and also the metrics that they use to measure how engaged people are.
Mhm.
For example, there is one community that I am a part of. It's a Thursday night sales, and they have over 15,000 people in the Slack, right?
Wow.
15,000. But if you look at the general channel and how much like comments and posting and reactions to certain posts are, it's less than 1%. I would argue it's probably, I haven't done the math, probably less than 0.5%,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I've attended um, these sessions, but it's more like a webinar style. It's like Q&A, right? So not a lot of people only get to interact with the hosts. But if you visit their website, they mention like community building and networking, but that networking piece seems to be missing a lot. I guess they kind of expect people to do that amongst themselves. They have like a channel for like meet people, um, but I don't know how effective that is, right?
Mhm.
And so what I'm hoping that we can achieve here with Kickback is by creating a space that is more equitable, where we don't have to live in mute, where we don't have to have this passive experience, where we can be in it, where it's not just about a few people, then maybe we can completely redefine what it means to have a digital community, a space where people can come together, and but truly come together.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the key reasons why Clubhouse as a platform struggled, is you had sort of stars upon the stage, and people could be promoted to the stage to have those kinds of conversations. But the fact that it was a stage and an audience, that's not a community, and it's hard to build a community from those kinds of experiences. Um, so something more egalitarian means that it has to, by definition, be more omnidirectional,
Mhm.
anybody to anybody, and the commons determines who gets listened to at a given time, and everybody has an equal voice within that space. That's what I really like about the spaces. And you know, I was wondering about sort of that sense of like how you uh how what you're designing is more focused on more equitable interactions in the space.
Yeah, exactly. I've always just realized that participation is just really hard to get people to participate, and it's just so often that people get left out, right? If you don't put your foot in the ground or if you don't speak up, no, you're never going to get your chance. I'm the kind of person who's I would consider myself to be rather courageous and stand up for myself, but even I have trouble sometimes where others are just dominating the conversation. I recall there's this one opportunity where there's a group of entrepreneurs, some startup founders, and we were meeting with an investor slash advisor, and everyone was talking about their company, right? And I didn't get my turn. They all expired through all those minutes, and then they even ended up going off topic, and it was just an incredibly frustrating experience. It's like, why did I even join, right? And I think that part right there is what really drives a huge piece of the fatigue, is that why am I even here? Like I didn't even participate. So it's just like, sure, maybe I learned a thing or two, or maybe I didn't learn anything, but like it was just incredibly frustrating. And so if we were able to just, ensure that we had like these different tools that were embedded within the product itself that could ensure that there was, things were more equitable, then I think that would be really fantastic, right? So although this isn't what I'm thinking here, is that we could have like some types of like status indicators or like minutes, right? And we can track how long someone has been speaking within the experience, so people can in real time tell, okay, this person has been talking way too much. Like let's drive the conversation over here, right? Let's shed some light over here, right? And I don't think that's something I've seen very often, but I think it's something that we could easily integrate within our experience. So I'm really excited about what that will look like once we
I've
have that
never seen
foundation.
that's amazing, man. Yeah. So I love that idea because it almost it takes almost a game mechanic. Like I'm almost picturing sort of this life bar, of like the more somebody takes oxygen in the room by dominating the conversation, everybody else's life bars start to go down as a result.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good idea.
That would be amazing. And I was thinking too, like sort of that question of friction and that question of creating equity within spaces. You got me thinking about Zoom meetings in particular, and not to rag on Zoom because it's a powerful platform.
It
It
is.
wouldn't have gotten to where it has gotten if it weren't
Mhm.
solving some major problems with interaction. And it had the least amount of friction of, I
Yes.
remember a lot of other conferencing platforms like Cisco and Adobe and like that have all gone away. Nobody cares about them anymore. And like, they're still stuck in some corporate entities. But I was thinking like that the lack of equity, that ability to be empathetic, to recognize when somebody else needs to speak in so many Zoom meetings, um, has forced us as humans to intervene with that. And what I mean by that is I'll go to gallery view in Zoom so I can see everybody
Mhm.
on the page so that I can be perceptive to see if somebody looks uncomfortable or if they want to say something. And the ability to like click the raise hand button, if even somebody has the digital literacy for the platform to know where to find the freaking raise hand button, um, you know, or to just see that somebody is like doing this in the call or, trying to get your attention, that as a human, I've got to turn that on and I have to be the sensor for that.
Yes.
The sensor, SENSOR, to understand, what the heck is going on. Um, the tool should be taking the pain out of doing that. And I love that
Mhm.
you're thinking in those terms. That's really powerful, man. Um, we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Do you mind if we put up one or two of these to take a look at?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please.
So I think this is a longtime friend of mine, Oliver. Oliver, great to see you, man. It's been a while since we chatted. So he said, how do you feel about having these meetings in virtual reality? Does it create an enhanced quality of interaction, or does it create equity of access issues and not really that much advantage on the quality side? That's an interesting question. Do you
I love
take
this
that on?
question. I absolutely love this question. And the reason why I love it is because we get to talk about what does virtual reality mean, right? And so there's this misconception where if anyone says VR, they immediately label it as immersive VR, right? They
Right.
think
I got to
of
put on
the
the goggles,
headset.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 But technically, what we're doing right now is virtual reality.
Mhm.
So this is non-immersive virtual reality. Playing a video game, Call of Duty, first-person shooters, that is non-immersive reality, right? So there's a spectrum: non-immersive, semi-immersive, and then fully immersive. And so the semi-immersive is like, imagine you like splurge on like 5 screens, right? And then you have like, your little steering wheel for a car game.
Totally surrounded by the experience, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like semi-immersive, right?
Sure. Sure.
And then fully is just full dive into the headset. And so I really like this topic about meetings with virtual reality because it's quite literally what we're doing, right? We're leveraging non-immersive virtual reality for meetings to improve the equality and to improve perception. But what happens is that although there's a lot of folks, right, within the tech space, a lot of startups who also have this idea, oh, it's like we'll use virtual reality to improve meetings. But the problem is that they aren't speaking to people. And they aren't really gauging like what do the people need, what do people want, right? What are our basic human needs? And so what happens is that when people use these immersive VR headsets for social meetings, does it create an enhanced quality of interaction? No, it doesn't. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure others from
And in some
VR
cases,
chat.
it creates nausea if you have like some kind of motion sickness or some kind of lack of equilibrium. I mean, I've heard of people just getting like physically sick from having the headsets on for too long.
Yeah, absolutely. That's still a problem. But imagine somehow we all didn't get sick anymore, right? What happens is that you don't see the other person, right? All you see is this low fidelity character that's a representation of them. I know Meta Quest has recently launched ways of tracking your eyes, so they move your avatar's eyes around. But it's still not you. It's like those micro expressions, right? Like seeing my actual teeth, like these things that are, some might think, oh, they don't matter, just the avatar, done, right? It's like, no, it's like it all matters, right? Every single little detail matters, especially when you're doing business, especially when you're trying to connect at a really intimate level, when you need to build trust, right? Business at the end of the day is mostly about trust. Like, I trust to engage with you to do this. I believe that you can deliver on this product or service, and you're just stripping away the person behind. It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. I know that Facebook is working on this concept called avatar codec. And so they use this like volumetric video, but we're fundamentally different to like how they're approaching it, because their approach is extremely computationally expensive. Ours isn't. Oh well, ours is expensive, but in a different way. And so I won't dive too deep into that. But to wrap up, I believe it was Oliver's question.
Yeah.
Does it create an enhanced quality of interaction? Well, our platform will. And that is because we focus on improving each other's perception, being able to identify where your attention is in real time, and mixing your audio depending on where your attention is. So essentially, our platform will be ideal for bringing groups of people together simultaneously. And then, sorry.
Oh,
I
yeah,
wanted
no,
to,
there's so much I want to respond to, but yeah,
yeah.
I want to give you the spotlight. So I love that, and I love I think there's something about quality of interaction. I'm glad you mentioned sort of that difference between avatars and more photorealistic video versions of ourselves. I mean, we depend so much on those social cues for interaction with others. And I think one of the great benefits, someone else was mentioning about how Zoom is such a game changer. Hi, Clarion. Wonderful to see you on the stream here. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, one of the great things about having pretty much near live synchronous video like this is I can read your facial expressions. I can read your body language. I get your tone of voice, which I would get on a phone call or something like that. But like, I'm getting more inputs so that I can have a meaningful interaction with you within that space. If it's a cartoon avatar, that's suddenly put another layer of technology between us that is very difficult to do. And so, I've seen some various ways of trying to deal with that, and to kind of go back to to Topia and to some of those other platforms that I've been in, even going back to Second Life, a long time ago, and now the distant past, it feels like. You start to get a few people in the room, in these rooms, and like suddenly they'll start to lag a lot. And so then that is another thing getting in the way. And like, so much of what I'm about, like one of the reasons I've got the Clocktower as my symbol for so much of what I do is that represented a technology that faded into the background. It was something that regulated human life and was a useful tool to do things, but I'm a firm believer, like, these things need to start fading into the background as utilities. They need to help us and augment us, and technologies that get in the way of that need to get cleared out of there. And that's kind of how I'm an impatient soul when it comes to tech for those reasons. But it's one of the reasons I love what you're trying to do.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to quickly comment, I love that. I didn't know that was why you chose Clocktower as your symbol. That's cool. I like that. I do want to give Clarion that is a great point. Zoom is an incredible platform. I will give Zoom their credit. The founder started Zoom because he knew how broken it was. He knew that people just needed a solution that worked every single time, and Zoom has worked every single time for me. What they do under the hood is incredible. So lots of credit to them. Really aspire for our client side technology to be as good as Zoom someday. It took them, they took a bunch of, like, a few $1 million and just went into their homes or office or whatever. And for 2 years, they didn't come out until they came out with Zoom, right? So, it's going to take some time to get there, but yeah, kudos to Zoom. Zoom, we're not looking to replace Zoom or compete with WebEx or Teams, right? Zoom and those platforms excel for one-to-many style of conversations, right? For webinars, right? So it's perfect. Use it for that. But what's broken with just any platform that is traditional video conferencing ultimately is that when you try to bring groups of people together online, there's overhead for the host, there's overhead for the participants. And that's really the problem that we're going to solve here.
No, that's great. I saw Kalisa, who's my engineer in the background. She had popped up one of the questions. Kalisa, could you put that up again? I think there was another. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sean was asking. Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for being on the stream. How does Kickback Space handle the lag or latency with groups of larger people? Yeah, that's a great question. I know you've been addressing that. So.
Oh yeah. Well, we completely flip what it means to have a video conferencing network. Going back to questioning how the world works, right? We question how these networks are constructed, how we network people. And believe it or not, joining Kickback will be a single stream up, single stream down, no matter how many people are within the space. So yeah, it'll be able to scale up to thousands of people with no lag at all. So as long as we have GPUs in the cloud, there's going to be no lag, and it's going to be a frictionless experience. So we're going to break some records on how many concurrent users for live video have ever been online. So I'm really excited to get that together and going.
That's amazing in and of itself, because I've had so many experiences where I've gone into a space where there's multiple people and videos, and you get more than about 10 people in proximity to one another, and suddenly everything grinds to a halt in the space. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So, so do you want to talk a little bit about, monitoring participation in meetings? Like, to get back to that idea of sort of like, I was being a little facetious about like the life bar and kind of gamifying meetings in such a way, but that's a really interesting concept to me. Like, how do we ensure that equitability of interaction? How do we spark conversations among as many people as possible? What kinds of things have you? Because I know you've been thinking deeply about these.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to that experience I had early March with the team, I had the opportunity to run the happy hour, right? So I got the perspective of of the host, and to me, I always try to be very like it's just something within me. I always try to be very mindful of how everyone's experience is, right? And so what I did was I strategically put people in different groups just guessing like who will mix and match well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I already experienced some of these and noticed, okay, maybe we should mix up this group here. And then what I would do is I would go into the group and then I would just listen. I would just listen and see how I'll take a little temperature reading. Okay, conversation's kind of it's strong or it's like it's kind of dwindling. I hear crickets in here. And so what I would do is I would actually swap people in and out of these groups without their knowledge.
So
And
then they'd be
so
somewhere else.
yeah, so it worked marvelously. It was incredible for some folks. Like the VP of engineering was not very happy about it, but it worked. It worked really well. And so what I would do is I would take the stronger personalities and I would put them into different rooms because I knew that they would take initiative to start the conversation, right? So it's cheating a bit because I already knew the people, right? And so that kind of helps you as a host be able to figure out like how can I like mix all these people up. But that's really one of like the brute force ways one can go about monitoring participation is just kind of like popping into these groups and just checking it out and seeing how it's going. More often than not, what I've realized is that whenever I've been a participant and been put inside a breakout room, the host never has come in to check in and just take this passive approach and see how things are going, right? And so I think that's something that that a lot of us who do host online meetings, we can actively do that instead of just chilling in the main room waiting for something to happen. Like we can be more proactive. Again, maybe not everyone can do that. This is just even more work on top of already running the event, right? So my situation was easier because it was just a happy hour, no stress. But what we can also do is we could potentially delegate, right? So you can delegate out to people, one person in the groups, like, hey, like it's your job to make sure that conversation's going or some type of accomplishment is happening or right. So delegate, right? People are willing to help. So if you give people really clear instructions, you can kind of offload that work a bit. Eventually Kickback will offload all the work for you. So then that way we can have all of those tools that we need to make sure that everything's equitable.
I love that. The reason I was smiling so broadly as you were describing that is like, oh, well, that's what a community manager is supposed to be doing, except this is in a virtualized context. That idea of the VR meeting, which is really interesting. I feel like if I was going to run something like that, I'd have to give people fair warning at the beginning to say like, we are going to switch context on you. Like you're going to be in a meeting and then you're going to be talking to somebody and then we're going to switch you to somebody else. That's part of the point of this, which is to get you to meet as many people as possible and to get people who are more conversation catalyzers, talking to it almost sounds like a speed dating format, except you don't have a timer that's ticking down. That we're just going to, at some point, variably, you're going to end up talking to somebody new. And I can almost picture like if I was in that and I just showed up in the room with somebody else, I'd be like, oh, hi Rocco. You know what? I was just talking to Kalisa. in the other room and learning a little bit about what she does, and then that's maybe the start of a conversation. Like, where did you just come from? How did you get here? How did that work? I can see some people really not liking that though too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think it'd be better to just give people the opportunity to just. So that's what I liked about GatherTown, is that and Utopia, is that people have the opportunity to move and figure out like where they mesh well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, something else I want to maybe get a little further into the weeds with Kickback Space, here as well. But one of the things that I like about all of these virtual spaces is that they add additional context to the conversation. Like, as I said earlier, in a Zoom call like this, I've got this video interaction with you. We can have a pretty natural conversation. I get your body language and everything like that. But aside from this abstract notion of this space where we're at here, there's no shared sense of space in our environments. With a virtual reality kind of experience, even a semi-immersive experience, to use your terminology for this, when I go into Kickback Space, there are rooms. I can actually literally move myself through approximations of physical spaces. And I think that transition from no physical context to a simulated physical context is meaningful in a couple of ways. One is there is a sense of place. For me, moving into a networking environment that I think just kind of puts the brain a little more at ease. Like, we're used to scanning the horizon. I think we're biologically configured to scan, for things on the horizon. And there is no horizon in a Zoom meeting. It's just each of us in these little boxes. But if we're in a shared space, suddenly there's not just the body language between you and I and the eye contact of that video conversation, but also the context of the virtual space that we're in, whether it's a coffee house room or a domed, a glass dome under the sea, or, whatever, like, and I think those of us that have come out of gaming culture and are used to wandering around these virtualized settings are a little more at ease around that. But that whole idea of just having that shared space and being able to interact with each other within that space, I think there's an additional layer of context and meaning around that for me, Kickback Space provided. And I don't know how you react to that, but
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's awesome. There's just so much that can be unlocked, right? Just from moving away from 2D to 3D in ways that I couldn't have imagined, right? So it's really incredible talking to people about what we're building and how we can work with them to just deliver better online experiences. Folks are just so creative and imaginative on like what it can be and where we can go with this, and really the sky's the limit, right? So I'm just really excited to see how people pull a product. So yeah, I think without further ado, I could show a quick little video clip.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll click present here. And so just bring your attention to the right side here. I'll talk about the left side here in a moment. This is our co-founder, Irfan. This is me within the space, and this is Eric. Right now, the video is of lower quality because it was edited and then compressed and etc. But it's typically, it's in higher resolution when you're in the experience. So what you can see here in this quick little loop is a third person approaching us, and we wave at them and we say hello. One of the things that I like to highlight is that you can see all the lighting, and there's some particles of dust like floating around in the space, right? Because all of this is computed in the cloud. And we do that for a reason. The reason we do that is to have the most realistic environments that people can enter. Because at the end of the day, we want to strip away that feeling that we're in a video game, because we're we're professionals, right? And most of the time we want to be meeting in like in a professional setting, and not so much like, oh, we're playing this video game here. It's more like this is a tool. And so we really focus on having these experiences that just feel really like the real world. Um, and so yeah, this is a prototype, right? Just a proof of concept. So there's no borders. This is just raw video being thrown into the space. In the future, we'll have like some video tiles to wrap people around. We'll include the name tag, etc. But one of the things that you were just talking about was about having this sense of shared space, right? Although although Eric and I, our designer, we're inside the space, in a shared space, I still have my own background and he has his own background, right? And so to really drive home that idea of like, okay, we are really actually together in the same space, we're going to be introducing this background removal, right? And this isn't just your ordinary background removal. This is your state of the art background removal, right? I'm talking, this is 10x better than anything that you've ever used on your laptop at home. And this is without a green screen, right? The idea is to not have to require a green screen anymore, because everything we do is about accessibility. And so if everyone needs a green screen to look like they're actually in the space, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So although this is state of the art, you can see that there's still some artifacts around here, and we're actively right now doing some research to remove that. So then we will, after we remove that, believe it or not, we will actually have the world's best background matting tool that exists like anywhere. And so that's going to be really exciting. Irfan is just an absolute genius. So really excited to have him on our team. And so the next step really will be connecting this work here and streaming this instead of from your laptop into this space. And then that's how we'll complete this whole cycle of, okay, now we are here together in this shared space. And yeah.
I love this so much. I'm excited to see how the green screen works. But for those of you who are watching this and you're seeing just a short clip, I can tell you, I was in here and I was moving around in this space, and it is an amazing feeling of just, even though it was not fully immersive, it was a great immersive experience because of that sense of space. And this doesn't do justice to it. Like, there are literally dust motes and things in the air, and it's just it feels very organic. It feels very realistic in ways that, where I've seen in other, we'll call them XR, kinds of settings, like a Topia or a Gather Town. Like, no ding against them, but it's a little harder to get into things. It's a little harder from a business context for some organizations to be accepting of little cartoon avatars or even abstract avatars. I think it's almost table stakes now to have some kind of video representation of ourselves to have that interaction. So this is really cool that this is continuing on. I know you've been working on this for, has it been about a year or two now?
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 years here in a few months.
Yeah. Oh, Sean is asking, is the background world static, or can you turn or look around in 3D space? It's totally, you can move around, you can turn around, you can do, you are interacting in the space proximately.
Yeah, so you can just imagine yourself imagine just like a video game, right? Where it's like a first person shooter where you can move around the world. You can go anywhere, and then we can modify these environments and quite literally plop in new virtual environments, and you're ready to go. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see how creative people get with a world that can be anything.
Are you thinking about are there going to be some low code, no code ways to sort of customize environments for individuals and meetings? Is that kind of on the cards?
Yes, absolutely. That probably won't happen until another 2 or 3 years from now,
Gotcha.
because we're still working on the foundations.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yes. But until then, we will be helping people out. I will personally work with folks and make sure that everything's up to par. We'll meet with our designers, with our game developers to build out these custom private spaces. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
So let's say one of our viewers, either now live or in the replay, that they want to check this out for themselves. They want to do a networking event and and try it with this with this Kickback Space environment. Can they do that yet? Are you guys open to having people come in and start using the platform?
Not quite yet. So
Okay.
we will in a few months. We are building a wait list. So do reach out earlier rather than later, so I can figure out exactly what is your use case, what are like the most important features that you need. I actually just got an update this morning from one of our cloud engineers who got a new version of our network working on Kubernetes. So that's really exciting because with Kubernetes, it scales up really quickly, really fast. So yeah, it will be launching a hard launch in a few months. If you want to try it out just with your colleagues in a few weeks, like reach out. And so, always happy to bring on more guinea pigs. So yeah, definitely excited to be testing this out with folks.
Well, it's amazing, and like I said, I could say from firsthand experience that what you're building is real, and it's a really I think you're pushing boundaries in a number of different ways that we've seen here and heard about today, and very appreciative of what you're doing. So if somebody wants to see about getting on the waiting list, what is the website? What's a good way for them to get signed up?
Yeah, we have a beta access button within the bottom right corner of our website. So just visit kickback.space, and I'm sure you can't miss it. It's the bottom right. So just go ahead, click that. It'll route you to a type form, and you will get an email from me. Oh, thank you, Sean,
Thanks,
for
Sean.
signing up.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, so it's, I know we've been talking generally about creating more mindful kinds of meeting spaces and building that out, and sort of we've been talking a lot about sort of like what does the near future look like, maybe with Kickback Space and how all of that works. But I think you've also provided us with some practical ideas and thoughts about, like, if you're running a Zoom meeting now, like what are some ways to just try to make it a little more equitable, to try to help people be a little bit more mindful of each other in the space. Right now, the human side is making up more of that lack than the automated side, but I think there are definitely some things that can be done to humanize those experiences and be more empathetic to everybody in the space. And I appreciate your insights around that.
Yeah, of course. Whatever I can do to help and contribute at the end of the day is what's important to me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think this is a good wrapping up point. I usually try to keep these to about 45 minutes or so. And for those of you who tuned in, super appreciative of all the comments and the interactions on the stream today. I try to run these every 2 weeks. I'm going to be doing it a lot more frequently with many thanks to my backstage manager and engineer, Kalisa Mikkel, who has been absolutely amazing these last couple of weeks, trying to help me get a schedule together and get great guests like Rocco lined up to go. I want you to stay tuned for about 2 weeks from now on the 26th. We're going to have another stream, and we'll be putting up an announcement about that shortly. But then following up in September after that, we've got a guest lined up, a friend of mine by the name of Amadou Diallo, who's going to be coming in talking about storytelling for community building and its use, as well as thinking a little bit about International Community Day, which is an event that I've been very excited to be involved with, acknowledging the importance of building communities where we live across the world and between all the geographies that we have, and celebrating the people that help make those connections happen. So in the meantime, we're heading into the weekend. Thank you, those of you who stuck with us through the stream and added your comments and questions. I deeply appreciate you. Please take care of yourselves. Be good to yourself and take some time and relax over the weekend. And we'll see you back here in about 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.